There comes a time in every person's life when the ordinary just isn't enough anymore. When the daily routine starts to feel like a well-worn path you could walk with your eyes closed, and you find yourself craving something, anything, that shakes you out of your comfort zone. That's when, out of nowhere, you get a truly brilliant idea. The kind that makes your heart race a little faster and your friends raise their eyebrows in disbelief. My brilliant idea? To go camping, alone, in the vast, sun-baked expanse of the Omani desert. No tour guides, no backup plan, just me and the endless horizon. My friends in America thought I was completely out of my mind. For them, camping means rolling up in a tricked-out RV, satellite TV blaring, and a s'mores station that would put a 5-star hotel dessert bar to shame. They asked if I was bringing a bear canister to Oman. I had to explain patiently that the most dangerous animal I'd encounter was a grumpy camel, and its deadliest weapon was a well-aimed glob of spit. No bears, no wolves, just camels with attitude. But I was determined. I wanted adventure, solitude, and a break from the relentless, never-ending hum of New York City. I wanted to trade the blaring sirens and crowded subways for silence so deep, it echoed in my ears. In my mind, I was a modern-day Lawrence of Arabia, minus the flowing robes but with better hair and a smartphone loaded with desert playlists and offline maps. The desert would be my reset button. No Wi-Fi, no deadlines, no endless notifications. Just me, the sand, and the stars. An entire universe overhead reminding me how small and free I could feel. I pictured myself writing profound thoughts in a leather-bound journal by a crackling fire, the kind of reflections that would make even the most seasoned travel writer jealous. Maybe I'd even discover some hidden truth about myself or at least come up with a few good stories. I imagined returning home wiser, calmer, and with a tan that would make my friends envious. I'd be the person who went into the wild and came back transformed. The reality? It was less about poetic reflection and more about frantically searching for tent poles that seemed to vanish into thin air. Sand in my shoes, sand in my sleeping bag, sand in places I didn't know sand could go. Still, I told everyone I was on a spiritual journey, a quest for authenticity, for something real and unfiltered. I wanted to see what I was made of when there was no one else around. The unknown was intoxicating. I craved an adventure that wasn't curated by a tour company or filtered through someone else's Instagram feed. I wanted to get lost on purpose, to see what I'd find. I was going to face the raw, untamed wilderness of the Arabian Peninsula. No marked trails, no safety nets, just the land as it's been for thousands of years. I'd be a rugged individualist, a survivor, someone who could handle whatever the desert threw at me. Or so I thought. Little did I know, the main thing I'd survive was my own spectacular incompetence. Turns out, the desert is a lot less forgiving when you're battling your own clumsiness. But hey, at least the pictures would look good on Instagram. If nothing else, I'd have proof that I tried. Proof that I dared to get lost, even if I didn't always know what I was doing. What could possibly go wrong? After all, isn't that the point of adventure? To step into the unknown, laugh at your mistakes, and come back with stories you'll never forget? My grand adventure began at a rental car counter in Muscat. I'd requested a rugged 4x4, instead I got a beige SUV, the color of depressed sand. Ahmed, the cheerful Omani at the counter, assured me it was very strong. He handed me the keys and said, "Inshallah." That's Omani for, "It's probably fine, but if not, good luck." Driving out of the city was chaos and courtesy in equal measure. Omani drivers are polite, but the roundabouts are a telepathic mystery. My GPS quit, so I relied on a paper map and questionable instincts. At a gas station I stocked up on snacks, chili lemon chips, date biscuits, and Omani Mountain Dew, which tasted like a rainbow filtered through sugar. Armed with snacks in my beige chariot, I turned off the paved road. The real adventure and trouble was about to begin. Inshallah. Let's see what the desert has in store. The paved road ended abruptly as if civilization itself had run out of ideas. One moment, I was gliding along smooth tarmac, the next, the world turned to sand and silence. My beige SUV immediately protested, its tires spinning and digging into the soft dunes, the engine grumbling at the sudden change in terrain. Every bump and jolt reminded me I was leaving comfort behind. The Wahiba Sands stretched endlessly before me, dunes rolling to the horizon, golden and empty, a sea of shifting shapes. It was a landscape that seemed to swallow sound and time, ancient and untouched. The heat was a dry, relentless force, baking the moisture out of you. The air shimmered, distorting the horizon, and every breath felt like inhaling from an oven. Sweat evaporated before it could cool my skin. I stepped out. The silence was absolute. No birds, no traffic, just the wind whispering over sand. It was a silence so deep, it pressed against my ears, making my own heartbeat sound loud. I was utterly alone. My 5 billion-star hotel had no Wi-Fi, no room service, just a paper map and a stubborn breeze. There was no one to call, no notifications, just the vastness and me. The map was nearly stolen by the wind, flapping wildly in my hands, but I managed to figure out my rough location. It felt like a small victory, a reminder that out here even the simplest tasks were an adventure. The desert constantly shifts. Tracks disappear as quickly as they appear. My footprints vanish behind me, erased by the wind, as if I'd never been there at all. Out here, nothing is permanent. My mission was clear. Find a secluded spot before sunset, away from sandstorms and prying eyes. The search felt urgent, the sun already dipping lower, painting the dunes with long shadows. As the sun set, the dunes transformed, gold to orange, then red, then purple. The sky became a canvas, and the sand reflected every color, shifting with the fading light. The shadows grew long, the landscape dramatic. Every ridge and hollow was thrown into sharp relief, making the desert look both inviting and mysterious. For a moment I forgot my lack of camping skills and just stood mesmerized. The world felt impossibly big, and I was just a tiny observer, lucky enough to witness this transformation. This was why I came. Not for comfort, but for awe. For the chance to feel small and amazed, to trade routine for wonder. The desert was both terrifying and beautiful. It demanded respect, but offered a kind of peace I'd never known, a reminder that nature is both a challenge and a gift. I was the only one in the audience for nature's masterpiece. No crowds, no noise, just me and the endless sky. The world felt vast and I felt small, but in that smallness I found a kind of freedom, a release from everything I'd left behind. And that was exactly what I needed. Out here, solitude wasn't loneliness. It was a gift, a rare chance to just be. Time to set up camp, under a sky that promised more stars than I could ever count. Finding the perfect spot was easy. Setting up camp? Not so much. My easy setup tent became a wrestling match with color-coded poles and 100 useless stakes. The wind turned my tent into a giant unflyable kite. The stakes were useless in the sand, like trying to nail jelly to a wall. My first attempt ended with the tent collapsing in a heap, me holding a rope, looking defeated. I tried again, using my backpack and water jugs as anchors. The tent stood, lopsided but standing. It looked more like modern art than shelter. I crawled inside, proud but exhausted. Then I realized I'd set the door facing into the wind. Every time I unzipped it, sand blasted inside. My sleeping bag, clothes, and face were coated in grit. Bob the Builder? More like Bob the Blunderer. But I had a home for the night. I'd conquered the elements, sort of. Survival, it turns out, is mostly about improvisation. With my questionable shelter finally standing, if you could call it that, it was time to turn my attention to dinner. The desert air was cooling fast, and my stomach was already rumbling, eager for something warm and filling after a long day of hiking through endless dunes. My plan was simple: pasta with tomato sauce. Foolproof, right? Or so I thought. But nothing is ever truly simple in the desert, where even the most basic tasks become a test of patience and creativity. Lighting the stove turned into a full-on battle with the relentless wind. Every spark was snuffed out before it could catch. I ended up building a makeshift wall out of backpacks and coolers, desperately trying to shield the tiny flame from the swirling sand. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a stubborn little flame flickered to life. I boiled water, feeling a bit like a caveman who just discovered fire for the first time. Out here, even the smallest victories feel monumental. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear, a rare sense of peace settled over me. The desert night is quiet in a way that makes you feel both tiny and infinite at the same time. But just as I was starting to relax, a mischievous breeze kicked up, swirling sand straight into my boiling pot. In seconds, my dinner was transformed by a fine, gritty mist. Nature's own seasoning. My pasta was now sand-spiced, extra crunchy, with a texture that could only be described as adventurous. I poked at it, half amused, half horrified. With limited water and a big appetite, I didn't have the luxury of starting over. So I dug in, telling myself that a little extra crunch never hurt anyone. Every bite was a gritty adventure. Each mouthful a reminder that the desert doesn't give up its comforts easily. It was, without a doubt, the worst pasta I'd ever eaten. But somehow it was also the most satisfying meal I'd had in ages. I'd earned every bite through sheer perseverance and stubbornness, and that made it taste like a small victory. Alone under the vast, star-filled sky, even sandy pasta felt like a feast. Out here, survival turns the simplest meal into a celebration. Sometimes the best meals are the ones you survive, the ones that remind you how resourceful you can be when you have no other choice. The desert always finds a way to humble you, to remind you that you're just a guest in its endless expanse. And as I sat there laughing at my sandy misfortune, I realized that sometimes the best stories come from the meals that go wrong. Before the desert, I spent time in small Omani towns. In America, asking for directions is quick and efficient. In Oman, it's a social event. I stopped for water and directions. The shop owner offered coffee, dates, and a 20-minute conversation about family and weather before we even discussed roads. Hospitality comes before haste here. Time moves at a gentler pace. Inshallah isn't laziness, it's acceptance that not everything is in your control. I started to appreciate the wisdom in prioritizing connection over efficiency. In Oman, a conversation matters more than a schedule. Maybe that's what I needed to learn all along. My friends warned me about snakes, scorpions, and wild camels. I packed a first aid kit fit for a field hospital and braced for nightly battles with desert beasts. The reality? The most dangerous creature I met was a persistent fly. We developed a complicated relationship, me swatting, it returning, endlessly. Otherwise the desert was empty, no snakes, no scorpions, just sand and silence. My big wildlife encounter, a determined line of beetles marching across a dune. I watched them for half an hour, captivated by their purpose. On my last night, I heard a strange noise outside my tent. Heart pounding, I peeked out, only to see a tiny desert fox with enormous ears. It looked at me, then trotted away into the night. The fearsome wildlife of Oman, less jaws, more Bambi. Sometimes, the smallest encounters are the most magical. Nature's drama is subtle, but unforgettable. And sometimes, your only companion is a fly. There's city dark and then there's desert dark. In the Omani desert, the sky is an ink-black canvas exploding with stars. The Milky Way becomes a brilliant river of light. Lying on my back, I felt like a speck of dust looking up at infinity. All my worries melted away under a billion unblinking eyes. The universe felt vast, my problems insignificant. There's no ego in the desert at night, just awe. I spent hours just looking up, the silence my soundtrack. No music, no podcasts, just the greatest show on earth. It was a powerful reminder to look up, not down at screens. Alone in the sand, I felt more connected than ever. The desert's beauty is ancient, profound, and unforgettable. That night changed me. Did I find spiritual enlightenment in the Omani desert? Not exactly. I came back with a sleeping bag full of sand and a better sense of humor about my own incompetence. The trip wasn't about conquering nature, it was about surrendering to it and laughing at my mishaps. The desert forced me to be still, to notice the little things, and to realize the difference between being alone and being lonely. My plans fell apart, my gear failed, but I learned humility and gratitude. Sometimes the best thing you can do is say inshallah and eat your sandy pasta with a smile. Would I recommend camping alone in the Omani desert? Absolutely. But maybe watch a tent setup video first. If you're willing to trade comfort for perspective, you'll be rewarded. You'll come back with stories, grit, and the memory of a sky so full of stars it ruins city stargazing forever. I wouldn't trade a single sandy, incompetent moment of it.